Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Welcome everybody. I think in the States you've sprung forward in time, so in Europe, in this respect, we're lagging behind. So it's a little earlier. It's a little earlier in the evening here, but it's lovely to see everybody. So as people are arriving, let's just sit together for 15 minutes. Please join me as we say the verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Thank you all so much for being here. I was just sitting, feeling such deep appreciation for people's commitment to their practice, to come and give up time to sit together in our cloud sangha, and just brought a smile to my face and some real warmth to my heart to see people appearing. And I was fortunate enough to be here last week offering a talk, and it feels kind of lovely to be here again. And last week I was exploring the koan about saying a word of Zen, which was deeply intriguing to me, at least. And this week I'd really like to cycle back to the koan that had actually been the prompt for exploring the idea of what do we say so the cat doesn't get it. And a little while ago I gave a talk about death as my friend, and just before the meeting started I was talking with Jessica, which is always a precious little moment of connection, and we were talking about what's in our first aid kits to support us in these turbulent times, and really appreciating the incredible resources that we have access to these days, but also our practice. And I was thinking about how I find keeping death close a really enlivening sort of thing. It feels really important to walk with impermanence in a cheery way. So I think that's what I've been thinking about. And I'm really aware that this consideration of the great matter of birth and death, thread through all the teachings, and they've played, obviously, as how could it not at this age, played a huge part in my own life, and considering what this really strange adventure of being alive means to us. So I'd like to read a poem that I wrote after a friend died a few years ago, at the beginning of COVID, in fact. The poem is called Alive or Dead. Our friend travelled with us, tucked into her used coffee tin. We had spades and trowels needed, ready to dig her in, to make her snug in the wider world under her favourite tree, which overlooks the ever-changing sea and sky. What we found were spaces all ready-made by life, small earth caves offered by the generous tree. Nestling her there, sheltered by a root, we took turns to spoon her back into the earth. Now I like to imagine small grains of her being carried on fur and skin and paws, padding out into ferns and mosses and the swaying harebells. The great tree roots inhaling her and sending cells upward through sap until on the tip of some soaring branch and through the exhalation of a leaf, she flies into the waiting sky, returned, alive or dead. Other favourite poets have danced with this, our most profound question. I love this particular poem. There are so many. I could have just recited poems all evening. But this poem by Mary Howe, which is called The Last Time. And she was having dinner with her brother who was dying. The last time we had dinner together in a restaurant with white tablecloths, he leaned forward and took my 2 hands in his, said, "I'm going to die soon. I want you to know that." And I said, I think I do know. And he said, "What surprises me is you don't." And I said, "I do." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Know that you're going to die." And he said, "No, I mean that you are." Do we know that? Do we let it into our bones, in our aliveness, in our days, that we're all going to die? And in these times when we may be seeking meaning and wanting ways forward, how can we use these other people's words and these ancient shared stories to help us towards awakening and ease ours and others' suffering? I heard a lovely talk today, and she said, Buddha didn't think of himself as a philosopher, he thought of himself as a healer. And the teachings are here to heal us from our illusion of separateness. And I've been intrigued by the koan from the Blue Cliff record, Case 55, for a long time. And I love the advice about koans, about letting them come to you. Letting them not be about what you understand, but letting them to enter you and settle close to your soft heart. That they're not here to challenge our minds, they're here to talk to our already awakened minds. And I apologize for the pronunciation of these names. I tried to Google them. I got about 3 different pronunciations. So deep apologies for the strangulation of them. Daowu and Jianyuan visited a house in mourning to offer their condolences. Jianyuan struck the coffin with his hand and asked, "Alive or dead?" Daowu said, "I'm not saying alive, I'm not saying dead." And Jianyuan said, "Why won't you say?" And Daowu said, I'm not saying. On the way home, Jianyuan stopped in the middle of the road and demanded, "Tell me right now, teacher. If you don't say, I'm going to hit you and leave." Daowu said, "You can hit me, but even if you do, I still won't say." Jianyuan hit him. After Daowu died, Jianyuan went to Shishuang and told him this story. Shishuang said, "I'm not saying alive, I'm not saying dead." And Jianyuan said, "Why won't you say?" And Shishuang said, I'm not saying. At these words, Jianyuan had an opening. There are, of course, so many ways to engage with this question of alive or dead, and so many ways of doing this that are part of waking up to how we are living our lives. You might hear my cat scratching, demanding to come in for the talk. Anyway, he's staying out. Annie Lamott says, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And it's really useful to think about this, what enlivens us and what deadens us, even as we're alive and breathing. That question about alive or dead pertains to this moment, not just to the before and after of breath. And I've had a really interesting trajectory this week thinking about the talk. I know this is really dear to my heart. I used to give workshops on death and dying. I worked in a hospice care which was all about death and dying. And I noticed that I kept feeling really dead around it, and I'd try and sit down and think about things and then just do something totally random and different. And it was like I was trying to breathe life into something inert, and then Sometimes I'd be doing something, I'd be out in the garden, or as it's often the case for me, I'd be in the shower, and something would ignite again, and I would kind of, oh, right, okay, I know how to pick up the thread. And, I'm really fortunate enough to know that uh, it's not a good way for me to go to flog the dead horse, to use that analogy. I know I have to kind of leave things and let them settle, rather than resist the whole process, and knowing that the energy would arise again. So I was sitting at breakfast with my partner, my lovely husband, just as he was preparing to go away again for a few days, and we were having a conversation, and I felt my way back in. And for me, it was answering the question of this koan. For me, is not the answer to this koan. And indeed, I imagine it never is. But to sit with, I'm not saying. And I get the irony of me sitting here saying. So, this is the paradoxes we dance with. In the time that this koan was taking place, that this meeting, this interaction was taking place, to hit your teacher was beyond thinking about. So for Xuan to really be thinking his way forward was to hit his teacher, was a mark of absolute desperation, to act out, to act out of that terrible need to know, to have something definite confirmed. Poor Xian was consumed with a need to know, and felt maybe he could bludgeon, frighten an answer from his revered teacher. Daowu, who'd probably favoured him as a student to take him to offer blessings to the house of the dead person. But Xuanyang couldn't contain his need, and he broke the precepts, and he desecrated the traditional respect for his teacher. And I'm imagining that many of us, certainly I can, relate to the desperation to know something. The real desperation we can feel to know something might be personal. Why me? What have I done? What should I do? Or it might be outside of us. What's happening? Like right now, I'm pretty exercised by the question, what is wrong with people? And I'm fortunate enough and old enough to know that there's no answer short enough or definite enough in my lifetime, other than the Buddha's instructions about the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance or delusion. And I can see that. And you may have had your own burning questions, and they really burn, don't they? It's a physiological feeling of wanting to know. It feels like it's going to burn you up. So I'm imagining, though many of us might not have been close to hitting our teacher, we might know something of that desperation, and believing that if we could know whatever it is that's burning up our insides, then some sort of peace or calm might prevail. I was reading an article by a practitioner called Bronnie O'Brien Johnston, who was led into practice by the disappearance of her father, who disappeared literally into thin air in 1952 on a flying mission over Korea during the war. And so much of her early life was either in pursuit of imagining where her father was, in denial of the impact of his loss. And 45 years after he disappeared, she finally found out, 45 years later, that he died on the night he disappeared. She says she was in a meeting for people who'd been affected by the Korean War. As I continued to read the specifics, she'd been given a document with the information on. I understood that everything I had for so long imagined about my father was wrong. He was never missing. He had died on September the 9th, 1952. All my childhood I had waited for him to come home and he'd been dead all that time. He hadn't disappeared. He wasn't a prisoner. He didn't have another family in China. He didn't choose to stay away from me. I saw that all of us in that room had been living in the same box, the same stuck place of never knowing where our missing men were, whether dead or alive. With no bodies to touch or mourn, we lived in a confused state of ambivalence, frozen in time and place, suspended between shock and hope. We grieved with no closure, the grief process interrupted and drawn out indefinitely, but shoved inside us. There was no possibility of resolution. And we can get stuck on a question, and the question can get us stuck on a box, believing that the answer will free us. And of course, there are many times, thanks be to scientists who keep asking questions to find answers that help us. And sometimes the persistence of asking a question is absolutely vital. I'm from Liverpool, and many of you may have heard or not know, but in 1989 there was a terrible incident at the main football ground there, and 97 people died and hundreds were injured and lives were changed. And for years the prejudice around, rough Liverpoolians was blamed the people in the crowd for the deaths. The people who died were blamed for their deaths. And only the amazing and courageous persistence of the bereaved and the injured brought about justice in a series of inquiries that only ended about 2 years ago, with one person being blamed for the poor policing. It was a failure of policing. It was never the crowd. And for some people, that settles something. So it can be important. It's not that questions aren't important. But Dogen said to pursue the true reality of Dharma is nothing other than not get involved in useless discussion. Isn't that delightful? To pursue the true reality of Dharma is nothing other than to not get involved in useful discussion. And Daowu stayed close to the true reality of the Dharma and didn't, even with the threat of violence, feel that offering an opinion, his opinion, would serve Jianyuan, that any answer would not offer freedom. A short while ago, although in these times of daily affronts to reality it already feels too long ago, Flint led inquiry by saying that he had no answers to the current turmoil. And though maybe that could be experienced as not helpful, it was a true north for knowing that someone else's answers are never our own. The teacher's job is not to give answers, but to sit in their own place and know that it's our way-seeking minds, our Buddha nature, that is our own response to life as it is. So Daowu echoed the Buddha. And once the Buddha, one of Buddha's monks asked him, what happens to the fully enlightened person after death? Does the fully enlightened person exist after death or not? And the Buddha refused to answer. Somebody asked Hakuin, what happens after we die? And Hakuin answered, I don't know. And the man said, well, what do you mean? I don't know. Are you not a Zen master? And Hakuin said, yeah, but not a dead one. How do we keep sitting in this place of I'm not saying? I'm not saying. Daowu doesn't say. He doesn't say he won't tell him. He says, I'm not saying. Jianyuan did leave the monastery for fear of reprisals. He had really broken the precepts. And many years later, after Daowu died, he approached another teacher to tell him the story, the very sorry tale of his apparently unanswered demand. He went to Shishuang and told him this story, and Shishuang said, I'm not saying alive, I'm not saying dead. And Jianyuan said, why won't you say? And Shishuang said, I'm not saying, I'm not saying. At these words, Jianyuan had an opening. Somehow, many years after the same answer, it finally landed right into him and opened it up. It was no longer a refusal to answer the question, but the appropriate response to any question. And as I sat at breakfast, I felt the energy for the talk rekindle, and I came back alive to it. And I came back alive because the aliveness was the question. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The answer doesn't matter. All we have is this. All we have is this. And I wrote this. This. Every morning, every day, on waking, on sleeping, on loving, on struggling, on celebrating, on grieving, on being overwhelmed and fearful, on breaking open with despair, on being filled with grace. This is all and everything we have. All and everything we'll ever have. This and this and this. This life, this moment contains everything. We don't need to know what it is, and we don't need to know what it means. We only need to, as our chant says, to open to life, the only teacher, to live with compassion. Katagiri Roshi was asked by a student to explain the Heart Sutra, and he started to try. And Suzuki Roshi leaned over and gently touched him on the arm and said, "Just say it's about love. Just say it's about love." So for all of us, just this, dead or alive, not saying. It's always only about love. Thank you. And if anyone wants to come and talk to me, maybe you've got a question. That would be fun. It would be lovely to meet with you.
Trudy,
Hi, Natalie.
thank you so much for being here. I love listening to you every single time, and this is no different. I what I've been thinking about as you were talking is this whole thing of not knowing and not, pursuing, dramatically the questions and all that. And I'm thinking about how we humans love to make up stories for things we don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like we can't stop. And my husband had a thing happen this week where someone did something that offended him. And of course, he made up, he's offended, he's going to write him this email and la, 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 la. And so I told him about what you told us last week about asking 10 or thinking of 10 reasons. And by the time we had that conversation, he'd already kind of started that process. And so we talked about it for a while and he thought up a few more reasons he hadn't thought of. Everything changed when he quit asking the questions and just opened up to, I don't know why he did it, but it might have been because he's a jerk, but it might not have been because he's a jerk. And I just watched him just relax and write a nice email back. And it's like everything just turned on that dime. It was really quite amazing. And I thank you for that.
I'm so glad to hear that. And it's such a good practice, isn't it? Because I am a recovering addict from knowing. Um, you know, it's a
I hear
very,
you.
very deep addiction in me. And not knowing was often accompanied by shame and, fear of humiliation. And knowing was my kind of superpower to keep the world safe, and realizing it's just another story is so liberating.
And I have this great imagination. I can make up stories like this. Boom, boom, boom. Maybe it's this, maybe it's this. Boom, I've got 10 stories. Probably none of which are true.
Yeah.
It's
And
so
if you
much, it's so freeing to say, I don't know.
and to love your imagination, to love your capacity to imagine 10 possible outcomes is just glorious, isn't it? It's like you can be
Kind of fun.
entertained.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, so thank you.
I'm
Appreciate
so
you.
glad it was helpful. Thank you. Hi, Lynn. There you go.
Mm. Mm. It always amazes me the way that I can remember Flint saying at some point that it's as if we move together with the same processes and thoughts. And the Sangha has a thread of, I don't know how to put it, but
Like I was thinking like a murmuration.
mm, mm. So I've been flying with you this week, I think, and one of the things that I came across was a practice which oh, I can't remember the name of the book, but a practice which is the practice of what if this is the last time?
Mm.
What if this is the last time? And as we came this evening, I was looking at everybody and noticing how, what if it was the last time that, you know, that I saw Cassie looking earnestly, or I saw Nellie sitting serenely, and I saw Jessica smile, or, you know, or Becky in her lovely pink. And, you know, and there's something about how, for me, that brought a real tenderness and deep respect. And things that I have often asked myself is if I chose between loving and not loving, because I'm not loving, you know, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
And there is no option. We're here to love, aren't we? We're born to love. We're born to care for each other and to love each other. And I think that's why it hurts so much.
It is the cost of loving, isn't it? It's losing and, you know, the possibility of grief. But as you say, it's like life's not worth a dime if we're not risking love.
And here we are sitting together.
Again.
Okay. And you know I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Trudy, good to be with you again. And I've been enjoying too that you've been able to weave one into the other of your talks, and that's quite wonderful. A few weeks ago, Joel gave, I may have already told people this, but it affected me hugely, that Joel did a Sunday Dharma Talk, and in the Dharma activity, he had us read the 5 remembrances and have a talk in a small group around our experience of it. And I hadn't actually run into that before. I mean, I probably noticed it, but I didn't focus on it. And I just thought, wow, this is really good, because somehow our brain keeps us, no matter how much we accept death as a concept, right? That there's something in our brain that just makes it forget it somehow, in terms of what am I doing tomorrow and next month years from now, you know? And so having that, I found quite supportive and something that I would kind of want to look at every day.
Absolutely.
And I was so moved by it that I started sharing it with people here in the assisted living, knowing that it could be problematic for some people. And so there are people I know well enough that I wouldn't bother to try to share it with them. But the people that I've had with around health and dying and the whole range of things, each one of them asked me for a copy of it. And were really touched by it at a place that we could have some conversation around. And all of the things are nothing that we know except that this will happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, it's just the way it is. And
So would you do something with me right now?
mm,
Okay. So this is just a really short little practice, but I'm going to say to you, Becky, I know you're going to die. And you're going to say to me, Trudy, I know you're going to die. So we can take a moment. Becky, I know you're going to die.
Trudy, I know you're going to die.
Thank you for knowing that. It helps me know it.
Yes.
Because we do love to forget it.
We do. We do. That's a couple of songs that are about that, you know, and I think that that's something that helps. Music stays somewhere else in our brain, and so having songs that affirm what we know and forget helps us remember.
Absolutely.
Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Hey, Trudy.
Uh,
Oh, hadn't used my voice today. Thank you for all of this, and especially the exercise you just did with Becky was very powerful. A good friend of mine named Mike had a near-death illness, and it took him, I would say, maybe 2 years to kind of come back. And he has an awareness now that he can die. And he is so helpful.
yeah.
It's, you know, it's kind of like he's a different person, but he's not a different person. But there's,
He woke up.
yeah, he woke up. Yeah. A number of my friends are quite old,
Hello.
and I love them and adore them so dearly. And it's not, it is wisdom, but it's not the wisdom of being alive, but it's the wisdom of the preciousness of life.
Yeah.
And I cherish them for bringing that forward with me so easily.
The end only gets closer.
The end only gets closer. You know, and caring for my mom now, and you know, when I'm here, I've made sure that she has meals, and I've, you know, really taken care of the things that I need to be taken care of there before I leave. And it's a lot right now in the transition. I just have, you know, a few days of being actually here.
Of being Cassie.
Yeah. Well, I, yeah. Um, and for me to actually wrap my mind and heart around the process that my mom is in right now is profoundly vulnerable. And uh, what's this teacher's name? Koshin Palin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that he'll say at the end of service is the days of your life have just decreased by one. And the first time I heard that, it like struck me like a knife. You know, it was unsettling, even though it was so obviously accurate. Yeah, that just so obviously accurate. But I guess I want to make sure that I'm paying attention and not wanting to just make it not so or pretend it's not so.
Yeah, there was a wonderful guy called Dag Hammarskjöld. He's quoted all over the place in various things, but he said, "Neither death nor the sun bear looking at for too long." You know, so there is something so powerful about our need to, just like Becky says, you know, find a way to bring it in and then enjoy our day. You know, find a way to know that you really are walking your mum home.
Yeah.
You really are, you know, and each day will have its treasure in as well. And you're not walking alone, you're walking with all these people here who walk with you.
I gotta review that.
Yeah, whether you can feel them or not, they're here. Death is so individual and so totally shared.
Yeah.
We're with you, Cassie.
Thanks, Trudy.
There's a musician I love called Oliver Arnolds, and he was working with a man from Ireland, a youngish man from Ireland who went under the name of Talos, and they wrote a song together. We didn't know we were ready. And they wrote it at the time that Talos was dying. And if you want to go on YouTube and watch, they did an amazing version of it, which has taken on this whole other meaning about silence, and we didn't know we were ready. And we kind of don't know we're ready because we don't want to be, and our practice, sitting on the cushion, is our preparation for death. So whether we feel we're ready or not, you know. I play that with my, sorry, I said that and I was playing Coming Ready or Not with my grandsons at the weekend. you know, and it's like you do the countdown and they know you're coming and they're hiding and giggling. And it's a bit like that, I think, you know. Death is coming for us, ready or not, you know. We're here, ready or not. We're all here with each other. And that's the gift we give each other. Oh, I'm so grateful to share time with you. I've just put you all back on gallery view so I can see you too. Oh, I'm just going to give a little wave to Leah. She sent me a nice message. Hi.
Hi there. I just the lyrics came to my mind of a song by Poco, Sweet, Sweet Love. And when I hear that song and I listen to that, it evokes such feeling inside me. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to, one, say hello, nice to meet you, and for us to meet you, and to thank you. I can't express the feelings that I have for the clarity and the curiosity and the comfort that you bring to your shares, to your talks. And I didn't want to miss this opportunity to introduce us. And so nice to meet you, Trudy.
Because what if it's the last time?
What if
Yeah.
it's the last time?
Yeah.
What if it's the last time? Then let's have shared, you know, some love and some connection and acknowledging each other's existence. How wonderful. I
Yeah.
see you there. It's just, I'm so touched by people's practice just to keep turning up. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you to everyone for this opportunity for me to ramble around with a little bit of death and to share it with you, the great matter. Let's join together in saying the practice principles. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. As we all navigate these extraordinary, turbulent times, I wish you all love and care and really good first aid kits. Thank you all.